be starting in a few minutes' time. We're just waiting for a few people to come in from the waiting room. This session will be recorded and we will be sending out the recording and the presentation following the event in the next week or so. Please do put some questions or comments into the chat function, and at the end of this session we will be doing a little mini poll. There's just a couple of questions that would really help us to make sure that we're giving you the right information and you can to enable us to improve our sessions. As I said, we are now recording this session. So welcome to our session this tea time. It's funding support for disabled students. As I said, this session is being recorded and the presentation and the recording will be sent out following the event. Please do put any comments you've got or any questions into the chat function and we will be answering them towards the end of the session. There will be a poll at the end. If you could just answer those couple of questions, that will really help us with improving our sessions. Okay, so who are we, HEP? We are the Higher Education Progression Partnership and we are funded by both universities in Sheffield, so Sheffield Hallam University and the University of Sheffield, and my colleagues from both universities are here with me today, along with a colleague from Barnsley, and we all provide impartial information about higher education and gaining higher level skills. So my name is Kelly Self and I am the project coordinator at HEP, and I support students who are underrepresented in higher education, and one of those underrepresented groups is students with a disability. So this is where our sessions come from today. So what you're going to find out about in this session is what Disabled Student Allowance is, so what we call DSA for short, how to apply and the process of it, the eligibility to apply, and then what those benefits and support you may be eligible for to receive and how you access that, along with just a small bit about bursaries and scholarships. Okay, so I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague who is from Barnsley College University Centre, Jackie Reaney.
I'm assuming the sound's working all right now. It wasn't a while ago. Hi, I'm Jackie. Good evening. I'm the Higher Education Disability Advisor at Barnsley College, now called Barnsley College University Centre. Every university has a disability team or a disability advisor. So really, when each of us speak, we're speaking for any other university or institution across the UK. So it's a good service that to enable the transition of students between universities with an understanding that the system's going to be parallel in whichever university or institution you attend. So what we're going to do, first of all, is look at the DSA, Disabled Students Allowance. It is a crucial source of support for many disabled students in higher education. Now, in my understanding, that's one sentence holds so many opportunities for myths and misunderstandings that we really need to pick it apart bit by bit. Okay. Next one, please, Kelly. So what is the DSA? It's an academic budget issued by the UK government to cover a disabled student's individual support costs in university or in higher education institutions. That sounds like a mouthful. It's a fund that has been there for 30 years. It was set up in 1991. The fund itself is quite straightforward, but I think a lot of the bureaucracy around it needs wading through very carefully. Until this week, it hadn't changed at all in 30 years, but this week it has seen some changes, and they won't affect a student's journey through the system. And in fact, it could be that it's a bit more straightforward for each applicant. So the budget, Disabled Students Allowance, is delivered by each of the student finance funding bodies. So in our case in England, Student Finance England hold the the purse strings for the DSA. They will say who gets it, and they will say how much of it we get for each applicant. It doesn't come as money, but it's a mixture of stuff, technical stuff and people practical stuff. It's not a means tested budget. It's not a benefit. It does sound, I admit, it does sound like disability living allowance. And, you know, I think therein lies a confusion for many students and for many families and parents. It's not a benefit. It won't compromise any family benefits, nor is it a loan. You don't have to pay back any of your DSA. Whatever we buy with it is yours to keep. So, you know, there are a lot of myths. I've known students go right through 3 years of higher education and not realise that this isn't something we're all entitled to apply to with any disability or health condition. So who can apply? Any student who has a diagnosis of something that will interfere with how they study. Now, this is where the term disability gets misunderstood, because we all have an image of what disability means in society. But in an academic context, it covers anyone with a diagnosis of something that will interfere with how you study. So if you have a diagnosis that interferes with your attendance, that interferes with your energies, that interferes with your concentration, like dyslexia or anxiety, anything that where you feel that your learner will be compromised in terms of their study experience at university, that counts as a disability. So anything that previously maybe came under the additional learning support remit, no longer will the transition bring you into additional learning support, but it will bring you into the realm of disability. So it's for anyone who has something that interferes with their academic engagement. It's for anyone who is full-time or part-time with that, as long as they're doing at least 25% of a course. It's for level 4 and upwards. So I have often had students coming in on access to HE courses or access to art courses or access to education courses, but they tend to be level 3. So I have to say, hang on in there a bit longer. We'll get to meet you when you're on level 4. So in other words, any student who is on a course where you would be entitled to apply for a government student loan, that system encompasses the DSA system. At the time of applying for your government student loan, you get access immediately to the DSA. The evidence that is needed, now this is the stumbling block in a lot of cases, so it's really important at this stage before applying that your learner checks the evidence before they send it in and possibly has somebody to check it over. So as disability advisors in any university or institution, we're happy to look at the evidence you have for your learner to move into university with a disability or a health issue. So there has to be some diagnosis, even for whether it's mental health issues, whether it's a diagnosis of anxiety, whether it's dyslexia and a diagnosis of a specific learning difficulty, whether it's Asperger's or whether it's a health issue. If your learner has been through the system with an educational health and care plan, then that is something that we will use as a background to the support we put together for each student. But Student Finance England only accept the EHCP as evidence for Asperger's or autism. We don't know why, but it's valid evidence for autism and for Asperger's. But if that EHCP happens to say, well, Lisa is autistic and also has dyslexia and anxiety and IBS, then the response from Student Finance England to that evidence would be, we accept this evidence for autism. We would require additional alternative evidence for IBS and dyslexia and anxiety. So don't worry about that. It's not meant as any kind of negativity towards the EHCP, but for whatever reason, SFE require different levels of evidence. For dyslexia, it has to be a full diagnostic report by an educational psychologist. You'll know if you've got a full report for your learner because it'll be about 30 pages long. Mostly there's a cost to these, and the cheapest cost I'm aware of at the moment is £340. That's really expensive. But when you weigh that against the fact that it gives you access to DSA, and within that DSA you'll then get access to about £5,500 worth of equipment. So you will, I hope, judge it's worthwhile going down the route of getting a full dyslexia diagnostic report. Unfortunately, the reports that are done for students to get access to exam provision at schools and colleges aren't acceptable. They tend to be a kind of a summary report of difficulties, and they don't count as a full diagnostic report. But once a learner's had a full diagnostic report, it will be lifelong. Then it will be useful for any future application to university or course, or even in a job. So it is worth getting that done at this point. Other diagnoses such as mental health issues or IBS or health conditions, the doctor or an NHS letter, a specialist, can be used as supporting evidence and acceptable to Student Finance England. They wouldn't accept something that would be like governmental evidence, such as a PIP documentation. It would have to be an NHS diagnostic report. So different types of evidence there to be aware of. I always say to students, this is the hardest fence to get over, getting the evidence right. And also, it's a bit like doing your passport. If you send the wrong evidence in, the application will be delayed while they reject that and send you off to get further evidence. So it is really, really worth having somebody check that over to make sure it would satisfy the requirements of evidence for DSA. So what do you end up with? So once your evidence is accepted, once you're over that big hurdle at the start, you will be entitled to equipment up to the value of about £5,500. And what will be taken account of is those areas where you would struggle with maybe software. So it would buy you something like dyslexia programs, or it would buy you maybe a dictating program. Maybe if your speaking skills are stronger than your typing skills, you would be recommended to use a dictating program. You would get probably, if you've got a bad back, you would end up with a chair with back support and a footrest. If you have if you need to work at different levels, so perhaps if you're in a wheelchair, or sometimes you need to work from a standing position, a workstation, a desk that goes up and down would be recommended. Remember, everything that is bought through this budget becomes the students to keep. It's theirs to keep forever. So there'd be a workstation as well as the equipment. There might be one-to-one support. So whereas at college you might have regularly, you might have a dyslexia tutor. That kind of support is covered by the DSA. So it's something that wouldn't be assigned through your college, but will be purchased for every student who needed a dyslexia tutor or mentor support would get one through the DSA funded approach. Excuse me. Frog in my throat, sorry. Likewise, there is part of the cost would go to providing you with a reimbursement for money you spend out on running your equipment. So if you've been provided with a printer and a scanner, so that instead of using the shared facilities within a university, which you'd find really uncomfortable and intimidating and really causes your student to be really anxious, then you would end up with your own printer and scanner, and therefore there'd be a cost of printing costs and ink cartridges, and we can reclaim that from the DSA budget. And the final strand of the DSA budget might be where students struggle to use public transport. We would explore, well, would you perhaps benefit from a taxi at rush hour time to get into university so you don't have to face the arduous journey that causes you to arrive really upset and distressed about it. It might even cause a panic attack. Some students use taxis just in inclement weather where there's a balance issue of what even walking around the corner to attend university. So if there is disability-related reason for needing to use a taxi rather than public transport, that strand of funding is made available as part of the DSA. So it's a good fund. It's very broad. It covers everything that a student might need to feel more comfortable with transitioning into university. Next one, please. So who decides? Well, it would be nice if we could just sit down and make out the shopping list ourselves, but obviously student finance like to keep a tight hold on who makes the decision so that a fair decision is being made. So once they're happy with the evidence we've put together and sent in for yourselves, then student finance will assign the applicant to attend or to speak with an assessor at an assessment centre. This is where it's changed. As of yesterday, there are 2 assessment centres doing the business for the whole of the country. In the north of the country, which would largely be our students, would be assessed at Studytech Assessment Centre, and in the south of the country, assessments will be done by an agency called Capita Assessment Centre. So someone would meet with you either through a camera call or in person and talk about the areas where you feel comfortable with working, how best your studies should be planned, the effects of fatigue and concentration, and the impact of your disability or health related need. So someone would talk you through that and would work with you to put together a bespoke package that addresses all the areas of discomfort and difficulty that you might face. So after they've met with you and talked it through, they'll demonstrate equipment to you, and as the student, as the applicant, you could say, oh yes, I'd like that, or no, I've never worked with that, and at the end of it, they'll provide you with a report which will then go to SFE, who will then buy the equipment. So they don't expect us to go out to PC World and make those purchases. It's all done by magic and sits on a cloud waiting for you to finally resolve where you're going to be studying. So, for example, it doesn't matter that you won't know which university you might be ending up at. So you might have an application into York, you might have an application into Sheffield. As long as you go through that DSA application, the equipment will sit waiting for you to make that decision of where you're finally going to be, and then it will be dispensed to you whichever university you're going to attend. In that way, there's a good chance that your transition to any university will be exactly the same experience for you. And the next one. When to apply? I'm going to say right now, but the forms are out within the next 2 weeks. Student Finance England tell me. So we can't apply from today, but we can within 2 weeks. But the focus for your applicant now will be pulling together all of the evidence that would support your health issue, your mental health issue, or your dyslexia. The whole process takes about 2 months. So if we get underway with working with you now on this application, everything will be ready for when you start in September. But you can pursue this when you want. So if you did start doing this DSA application in September, it would probably be nearer Christmas before you get your laptop and your hardware and your software and your one-to-one support. It's a long process because, as you can understand, Student Finance England are working with an awful lot of students, and you know we're in a queuing process. As soon as the forms are out, I'm ready to start working with any students who want me to work with them, as will all the other universities. But the most important thing you could be doing at the moment is digging out the kind of evidence that will best work to put that application form together. Okay, thank you. I'm hoping that has given you a bit of an insight as an overview into the system. Justine's going to go through the paperwork now and pick that apart for you. Thank you, Justine.
Thanks, Jackie. Hi, so I'm Justine and I work at Sheffield Hallam University in inclusive support, and I'm just going to talk you through the physical process of applying. Next slide. So as Jackie said, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, but certainly by the end of March, Student Finance should release the applications for 24-25 academic year. And when you apply for your student finance, for your core finance and your maintenance loan, you can apply for DSA at the same time. So when you log on, you will be asked if you want to apply for disabled student allowance. And as you can see on this slide, it will sort of give you a bit of an overview of what it is and what you might be able to get. And so if you tick the box, yes, I want to apply for disabled student allowances, then that will add the application to your area on your portal on student finance. If you're not ready at that time to apply, I would still tick that box, because then your account will look similar to this. As you can see, this is from quite a few years ago now, but it will look roughly the same as this, and you'll have that start application for disabled student allowances on there, so that you don't have to keep sort of trying to find it. That is the sort of the page that tells you what you've got to do. It's your to-do list for student finance. Next one. So when you are ready, you can click on Start to Apply, and then again it'll run through who can apply, what a disability is, and Jackie's just been through that, but that's just sort of their Student Finance England's wording of the Equality Act and who is included in as a disabled student. Next one. Then it will ask you to select any or all disabilities that you might have a read through these, get the one that sort of matches closest to your disability. There is other, and absolutely use other if nothing is anywhere near close, but if there is one sort of close, then do click that one, because that just gives the university a little bit of an idea when they receive that. But yeah, choose the one that's most suits your disability. Next one. You'll also be asked once you've filled in the form, so it's a really quick form online, about consent to share, and this is quite important to tick that you do want to share, both with your university and with your needs assessment, because if you don't click that box and you have a problem and you want your university to chase it up, we won't be able to. They will just say we haven't got consent to share, so we can't say whether they've applied or not. Whereas if you tick that you agree that the University Disability Service can speak to SFE, it's often a lot easier down the line should you have any issues. Next one. And then it will ask you if you want to add anything about your disability and how it affects your studying. You don't have to answer this question, you don't have to put yes, but if you do answer it and you do put a few words of perhaps how support you've had in the past or how you think you could be supported at university, that won't go against your application at all. It's just for DSA, not for any other reason. So if you do want to add some words, then that's fine. If you don't, again, it won't particularly matter. The next one. So once you've filled in that application online, you'll need to send your evidence, so a copy of the evidence, so you can do that by email, and so scan it and put it on there. If you haven't got a scanner, as long as you take a decent photograph, you can send it through that. Just make sure that it's got your name on there, your condition and any impacts that you've got. You can also download a paper form if you prefer that, and if you just Google DSA 24-25, once they're released, you'll be able to print that off and you can fill it out with a pen and paper if that's the way you prefer, and send that back in to the address that it will tell you. For some people that's easier, but it does mean that you haven't got that sort of confirmation on your portal for your student finance, so it is there. But if you need any support, as Jackie's already mentioned, get in touch with the university that you're planning on attending, and they can support you within that. Once you've got your application in and you've sent your evidence and they've agreed to all that, This is the stage that is now changing, and it used to be that they would send you a letter out and tell you how to book a study needs assessment. They're making it a bit more straightforward, hopefully, going forward, in that they will email you and they will send you a link to book your study needs assessment straight away, so you won't have to remember, and they will chase that as well, so they won't just email you once. So when you fill in your student financing, make sure it's an email that you're going to be able to have access to after maybe you've finished college. A lot of students perhaps put their college email on, and then as soon as they finish college or school, they can't access it anymore. So if you need to, set a personal email up at this time to do your finance from, and you'll get an email from Student Finance to tell you about your study needs assessment. And this is where I'm just going to look at the some instructions that we've got, because we've not done it before. So rather than you having to book your study needs assessment and find your assessment centre, they will contact you. You'll have a single point of contact from a person at the study needs assessment centre. And as Jackie's already said, for most students applying from home and from this area, it will be Study Tech. Anyone more south, West Midlands, East Midlands, Wales, Northern Ireland, East England and London will be assessed through Capita. And if you wait until you're at university to apply, it will be the university's address that they use for the assessment centre. So if you're going off to London, you'll be assessed through Capita. If you're doing it from home, you'll be assessed through Study Tech. That doesn't really matter to the people applying, other than it'll just be a different name, but it shouldn't make any difference at all. And then you'll have your study needs assessment. I think we've got slides on that, have we? Let me check. Have your study needs assessment, and then they will sort out your equipment, get in touch with you when to provide your equipment, where to provide it, and then you'll get a letter if you've got a non-medical helper, so a mentor or a study skills. They will tell you how to book that. So they're taking a lot of the student side of the bookings and the assessments and making it that they're more proactive, getting in touch with you, which hopefully makes it a little bit smoother. But any questions, get in touch with the university, get in touch with me, Jackie, or Alison if you're not sure where you're going yet, and we can sort of support you through that process. Next slide. So up next is Alison, and she's going to talk about the support at university.
Thanks, Justine. So I'm the Disability Transition Officer, and I'm based in the Disability Dyslexia Support Service at Sheffield University. Next slide, please. So obviously this session is all about accessing DSA and thinking about why and how applicants and students might do that. But my bit is just to briefly mention that as well as the support that's available through DSA, it's also really important that students access the support that's available through the university and is only put in place through the university. So I always explain to new students that I try and explain it as there are two types of support at university. There's the support that comes through DSA, through the individual's allowance, and there's the support that the disability service within the higher education institution can put in place. So some of that support from the university can only be put in place by the university, and I'll say a little bit about what those types are. In terms of the type of support that will be available from university, it will depend upon an individual's support needs in the same way that it does for DSA. It will depend on the course that a student's on and the support that's available. And it's important to note that not all higher education institutions have exactly the same types of support. So it's really important that if support is going to be an important factor for a potential applicant when they're choosing which university to go to, that they do their research and they find out about the types of support that's available. Just to mention as well, so setting up university support, it's the University Disability Advisor. So there are different job titles around depending on the university. So Disability Advisor is one of the job titles that will be given to the person within the university, within the disability service or wellbeing service, inclusion service, that is responsible for putting support in place for that individual. So the type of support that is eventually in place from the university will be based on the individual's needs. There will be a discussion around what the potential barriers are within university for the individual. So there will be a discussion about that. There'll be a discussion about disability impact, trying to identify the barriers, and then the disability advisor will match that with the support that's available. Now, as well as providing evidence to apply for disabled students' allowances, students will also need to provide evidence to the university's disability service. The bar tends to be higher in terms of what is needed for DSA compared with what some universities might accept as evidence. But obviously today is all about encouraging people to apply for DSA. So basically, if an individual obtains evidence that's sufficient to apply for DSA, to be eligible for DSA, then it's pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be accepted by the university as well. So as well, the disability service might be involved in setting up some of the DSA support that's been approved for an individual. So for example, if a university has their own in-house support work service, for example, so if a student has been recommended study skills tuition or specialist mentor support, there are different providers available, different suppliers available for that support. And if it's the university that has their own study skills tutors, their own specialist mentors, then it might be the disability service that then needs to make a referral for that support to start. But it depends on what's being approved through DSA. But the good thing about DSA is that once the support has been approved, they do provide quite a clear letter in terms of this is what's been approved and these are the steps that you need to take to set up support. So it should be fairly clear if some of that's through the university. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of what the university is doing, so some of what's available through a university will be available as inclusive practice. So it will be things that are there as standard to ensure that all students have equal access to their course and to the facilities at university. And some will be there as reasonable adjustments that are put in place through a discussion with the student's disability advisor. So these are just some types of different types of support. So lots of universities now deliver transition events and orientation support for applicants. So that's all about getting students ready really for university. So it's about familiarisation of campus or of key members of staff, of support services. So it's kind of putting in place events and activities to support students to get ready for university. So it's always worth researching and finding out what is put in place by the disability service around that. I think it was Jackie that said some universities might be able to refer students for diagnostic assessments. So Jackie talked about how expensive it can be to access a specific learning difficulty assessment, for example. Some universities have a system in place where they can refer students for diagnostic assessments. That tends to be for specific learning difficulties if it is available. Some universities might also be able to refer for autism. Not all universities have that referral system in place. If they do, some fund it, some part fund it, some means test it in terms of funding. So again, there'll be different local arrangements around those, but again, it's worth exploring that if it's needed. Exam adjustments. So it's the University Disability Service that determines what exam adjustments need to be in place for a student. So a needs assessor might make some suggestions. They tend not to. It tends to kind of be left to the university's disability service. In terms of what a student would access around exam support, again, that depends on the individual. It depends what they've accessed previously and has worked for them. But it might be things like extra time, rest periods, nutrition breaks, use of a PC, for example. There will be a communication system in place where the disability service can share information with an individual's academic department. So what we do is we provide information so that the department has a bit of context in terms of what the disability impact might be, what the barriers might be for a student, and then we make recommendations for how the department can support the student in terms of making individual reasonable adjustments. And then lecture recordings. So this is an example of inclusive practice where lots of departments now, lots of universities, sorry, record their lectures as standard. So that might be just an audio recording, or it might include any recording of any information that's gone through the system in terms of kind of video recordings as well, and notes that are made by the tutor, for example, during the session. So lots of different support, and support that comes through the disability service rather than through DSA. There's more. And access to computer equipment or assistive software. So this is what we hope would come through DSA for a student. But if a student wants to be able to make use of that while they're in university and they haven't got their equipment with them or their laptop with them, then lots of universities now have similar types of software available that would come through DSA that students can make use of. And then support worker assistance. So a lot of support work, so kind of the support from people, comes through DSA. So things like specialist mentors, studies skills tutors, but not all of it is funded and recommended through DSA. So some types of specialist note taker support might be, but generally note taker support would need to be considered by the University Disability Service. A lot of services have moved away from actually providing people as note takers because there's really good software now to support students with note taking. Orientation support, so that might be if an individual needs one-to-one orientation support, so support from somebody to show them around university before they start. Library support, exam support workers, that's the type of support that might be possible, but it would need to be considered by the University Disability Service. So our final message around that is basically apply for DSA, but also contact the Disability Service to make sure that that support is in place as well. Okay, so we're now going to hear from Sana. So Sana's a current student at Sheffield Uni, and Sana also is on our team of disability champions. Okay, Sana.
Hi, my name's Sana. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, hi, my name's Sana and I'm a second year student here at the University of Sheffield. I'm going to first talk a bit about myself, then I'll move on to the support that I access through DSA and also the university. So as I said, I'm a second year student. I study law at the University of Sheffield. I moved from Manchester and now I live in accommodation at Sheffield. So that's mostly about how I live in accommodation. I kind of travel into university for lectures, seminars, and I use support for that, which I'm going to move on to. I got quite a bit of support from my sixth form, but also just parents who kind of helped me fill out the DSA forms, kind of make decisions around what type of support I would need before university. But it's also quite important I found that I kind of got used to doing this stuff myself, because the change from sixth form to university in terms of like the support that you get is different. I would say in the way that you kind of advocate for yourself and what you want more than kind of being given the generic support in the experience that I've had. So for the DSA support that I have, I think it's crucial for my experience at university. Without it, I wouldn't be able to do the course that I'm doing now. So my main equipment is my laptop that I got given through DSA, which I use for everything. So I use it for all my lecture notes, I use it for seminars, I use it for literally everything. It has speech technology on it because I'm blind, so I kind of have speech technology which reads back what I've written and kind of helps me navigate around. I also have a support worker, so it's funded through DSA, and they kind of help me with research. So with law, there's quite a bit of research that I can have to do, and I struggle with using all the websites and the kind of law specific features that I kind of need to use. So I have a support worker who helps me navigate it, who helps me find relevant articles or just any materials that I need, and will kind of send it to me in an accessible format, kind of like I had at sixth form. They kind of work a similar way. So I think that's very useful, and I'd struggle without that. So that's all the everything I have from DSA. And then through the disability service, I get quite a bit of support. So when I first moved to Sheffield, I got orientation support because I'm new to the city. So I kind of had someone to show me the campus, where all the main buildings are, kind of teach me how to go from my accommodation to the main buildings that I'd be using, like the Students' Union and the law school, and make sure that I can navigate there safely, so I'm able to do that. At the start, I also had a taxi service. So right at the beginning, I had taxi service funded through DSA, just in case I couldn't go to my classes by myself. I now, through orientation support, walk through to all of my classes, but it was there just in case. So I'd recommend applying for stuff through DSA just in case. It's better to have it than to not have it and need it later on. And through the disability service, I also have I had a note taker at the beginning as well, so just to make sure that I wasn't falling behind, or in case I couldn't keep up to like any of my lectures or anything, I'd make sure that I had the notes so I wouldn't fall behind. I've also learned that I don't always use that, but again, like I said, it was really useful to have that at the beginning just in case, to know that it was there rather than struggle and not have it, because that would make life a lot more difficult. So that's most of the support that I access through the university. The last one that I have is a library support worker. So that's the one to help modify all the materials sent out through the university. So my support worker helps me with research, and the library support worker helps me with my own, like with everything they upload onto the central university system. So any like PowerPoint or any like documents, seminars, or anything that they put up that I can't access, the library support worker tends to like adapt that for me and send it to me. This is very useful for me because they kind of see my emails straight away, and they kind of make sure that I can access everything. So that was really useful for me. So that's all the support that I have. I'm just going to explain a little bit about my experience applying for DSA. So I kind of applied earlier on when I applied for student finance in March. Like everyone else has already said, it's good to do this earlier on because it does take quite a while. So I kind of applied for it, and then they got in contact with me about the needs assessment that I needed to do. So that was really informal, and I found it very useful because they kind of don't tell you what equipment you need. They kind of listen to what you've already used, and they'd suggest other things that you might have never heard before. And they also incorporate what you've already had, so it kind of works the best of both worlds. And then they allow you to like learn how to use any new equipment that you've never used before, and they fund that as well. So it's really useful. And then I had it all ready and sent to me before I went to university, so I was kind of ready for when I started, so that was very useful. And same with the disability service. So my disability advisor contacted me in the summer before I went to university and kind of discussed what my needs assessment would be, and they kind of filled out the form which would be sent out to all my lecturers. So they kind of had an idea of what I would need, what support I would need, and just an idea about my disability. So that's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sana, and I really appreciate, you know, how much detail that you've gone into there, because that is pretty impressive how much you've covered there. I think it's amazing what, you know, you're achieving, and going on and getting all this support is great, and I'm glad that you are getting that support. This is what DSA has helped, isn't it, for you, is to get that support and make sure that you have the, you know, a good experience at university. So for you, just a quick question, Sana, have you moved far away from home?
Yeah, so I've moved about an hour and a half.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I from just outside of Manchester, from a town called Bolton. And yeah, I live in Sheffield now, and I've lived here for 2 years in accommodation. And I travel home on the train.
Wow. Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you so much, Sana. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you, but we'll finish the session first and then we'll come back to those questions. But thank you very much for your personal touch there. So we'll just carry on now with the final few slides. So just to really sort of cover, on top of DSA, so Disabled Students Allowance, there is also bursaries and scholarships that institutions do offer. Now, bursaries are usually awarded to students based on their personal circumstances, and then scholarships can be on that academic, on excellence of achievement, things like that. So it could be someone's very good at sport or music or academics. But unlike any student loans that come up with, you know, when you go and apply to go on to university and have to get a maintenance loan and the actual fees loan, they are these are student loans that are non-repayable, so it's basically free money. So again, like we said earlier, I think it might have been Alison that said about research. It is really important to just go along and do research into organisations that might have further support, into financial support for the young person. Okay, so these are just examples. So down in London, they have a bursary for, they recognise disability and has disclosed it on, and if someone has disclosed it on their application. In 23, these are always changing. They offered a bursary for 4,500. As I say, these are free money. Sheffield Hallam do a student success scholarship, and they offer between £600 and £2,100. So again, what we're always saying is just research, have a, you know, look at institutions that you're interested in going to and ask the question. If you don't ask, you're not going to get. So please just, you know, keep that in mind on top of obviously the DSA support as well. So I think we might be now on to, so what I'm going to do now is we are going to put a bit of a poll up on the screen for you to do, just as I finish off the final few slides. Please just, you know, answer the couple of questions. They shouldn't take more than a minute or so each to fill in, but your feedback to our sessions is really, really important for us to improve and to bring more information to you, what, you know, to help you and support yourselves, young people, whoever is attending these sessions. So as I said before, we have both institutions have a lot of support out there. Now, SHU Progress is Sheffield Hallam's applicant support scheme, and this is about basically providing support for applicants whose personal circumstances might mean that they have a barrier to going to university. And disabled students is one of the groups that they support. Now, this is something that you can apply to prior to attending university, and it's very straightforward. It's either a teacher, a social worker, a support worker, someone that knows you and your background can fill out a nomination form, and the link is on there. As I said, there is a QR code. These slides will be sent out. So if you're interested in going to Sheffield Hallam, this is a support scheme that can support you. Again, as we say, it's about research, so there will be other institutions as well that offer different schemes. The University of Sheffield have their Access Plus, and this is for lots of different for disabled students as well. And there's lots of support schemes out there. They're transitioning to and studying at university. There's the Disability Transition Officer. You know, there's lots of people that will support young people or adults that are going on to university with support. Okay, so please just, you know, bear them in mind, but please do research as you you know, are looking out there for any institutions to go on to. As I say, we are going to go now to a Q&A session. This is our website where we have a wealth of resources for you to access. These, you please, you know, if you have any questions, please drop us an email at this email address. We do have a parent and carer newsletter that we send out termly that can be, you know, have lots of useful and helpful information on it that you can sign up to as well if you drop us an email. The resources we have specialist resources for different underrepresented groups. So we have a brochure or a resource called Here For You, which we are currently updating, but the current version is still valid. There might be just a few tweaks to it, but these resources are really there for you to have a read through. And as I say, any questions, please do ask us. So I'm now going to stop sharing my screen because I want to go over to the times now to see if we've got any questions in the chat, because this is the time when, please, you know, ask us any question you've got, just so that we can, you know, hopefully answer them for you here. And whatever we can't answer, we will always go away and find out. Obviously, colleagues are always there to support you. So if you've got any questions, please, could you pop them into the chat, whether that's for Jackie, Justine and Alison, or for Sana? Must have answered all the questions. Oh, we've got someone writing, so hopefully we'll have a... So the question is regarding a doctor's letter supporting application, can you use previous letters or do you need a new letter from the doctor? Jackie?
Generally, they'll accept an old letter if it's a long-term condition. So if you've had epilepsy, you know, that's might be a lifelong, and they'll accept that. If it's mental health, they do tend to ask for something up to date because that might have changed since it was last explored. So if you feel that the condition is something that would be recognisable as lifelong or as a long-term one, then that would be acceptable, but you wouldn't need to produce something that is specifically this year.
Kelly, you're on mute.
That's helpful. If I am on an ASD pathway, am I still able to apply for the DSA?
Recently, I've had a couple accepted where it said ASD traits, but that it's not been consistent. I have heard that some people have been rejected where they've said ASD traits, but you know, if there's nothing else, I think it's worth giving it a try because it is a long time before you can get an ASD diagnosis, unless your doctor's prepared to add it to the GP evidence form.
We just to say what we do. So we advise students to ask their GP to complete a DSA evidence form to say it's kind of basically saying that there's a working diagnosis in place for autism, and it would need to say clearly that the individual has been referred for an autism assessment, and it would need to clearly give some information which explains what the kind of day-to-day impact is. So that's what we've been doing for quite a while. Recently, it has changed a little bit, and we've seen a lot more of those being rejected. So we're kind of saying submit a working diagnosis with the caveat that it might not be accepted. But in the absence of any other diagnoses, any other evidence, then it's worth trying.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Alison.
I think sorry, we do the same, and use the university. You know, you go and speak to disability advisors at university, because they can try and fight your corner a little bit as well, or they can try and tell you what wording's missing. So yeah, get in touch with the university if that's not accepted.
Thank you. When should my son contact the Uni Access team if starting in September?
Now.
Yeah, we're getting referrals now. Yeah.
I've sent out about 40 packs introducing it in response to referrals from admissions teams, UCAS forms. So now, yeah, we can't apply for the next 2 or 3 weeks until the forms come out, but we can start putting your case together for you.
Thank you. And the final question, what happens if whilst you are at university you think needs something else that will help you? Can you ask DSA further on?
Yeah, anytime. Just get back in touch with the assessment centre, or sort of get in touch. But yeah, anytime. Or if you get a new condition, you can add that on.
As disability advisors, we can email a new diagnosis through, and then your assessment centre will be asked to add something to the report to update it to accommodate the new diagnosis.
And I regularly, obviously it's different if your needs have changed, but I regularly hear the Disability Champions advising people to say yes to everything at the assessment stage, because it's often easier to have something approved that isn't accessed than it is to not have it approved and then need it, because then at a later date then you've got to go back and kind of get that approved. So obviously, as I said, it's different if your needs change, but yeah, say yes to what might be recommended, even if the individual isn't sure if they're going to need it. It's such a like abstract concept when you're having your assessment as an applicant, because you haven't been in university, you haven't attended a lecture, you haven't attended a seminar, you haven't submitted an assignment, had multiple deadlines. So it's all, it's all very uncertain, unfamiliar. So yeah, kind of hopefully the assessor will help you to anticipate, make recommendations. But yeah, say yeah, if you don't need it, that's fine. You've got control over what you access and what you don't.
Thank you, and I think that is it. Is there any more questions? So I'll give you 30 seconds to write any more questions. Otherwise, while I'm waiting for some questions to come through, I just want to thank the presenters today. So Jackie, Justine and Alison, and a big thanks to Sana as well, because without Sana, I think, it's great to hear from students who have lived experience of these products that are around, but also I really appreciate her honesty and how much she went into to support this event. So thank you, Sana, and thank you everyone else. So by the looks of it, we have 1 minute to go before our close of our time, so we've done really well today. But again, please just research, just ask questions. Please just drop us an email if you have any. We can we're there to be able to field them out to other colleagues to find the answer for you. So don't sit in silence. Please do, ask us. We're more than happy to help. This has been recorded, so we will now be sorting that recording out and then the presentation slides, and we'll be sending that out to you. So you have got that as backup to sort of go over anything that you think you might have missed. Okay, but thank you so much for joining us this tea time, and hopefully we'll see you at future sessions.